a man, who they say he murdered 3. Strange things have happened there. No stranger would it be if we met at midnight in the hanging tree.
Welcome to the show. I'm your host, Chris James. Organic Man Coffee Trike now has some of my books for sale again. Marta asked Maggie to ask me to restock their shelves. It's not that I don't listen to people, it's just they'll ask me to do something and I'll either forget or I'll get busy doing something else. But now, if you swing by the coffee shop, you'll find a few of my books in a back part of the store, right next to the bathroom. Good place to be, because everybody has to go there. Unfortunately, you cannot get the books on organicmancoffeetrike.shop, but you can get them at Amazon. The long and the short of it is they now have a few of my books, and you can buy one or two along with the best coffee in the universe. If you can't get there from here, no, from there, wherever there is, you can go to organicmancoffeetrike.shop, or if you are in town, you can go to 4501 McPherson for the best coffee in the universe. Drink coffee and read books. It will make your life better, or at least more interesting. Back when Art Bell was still hosting Coast to Coast, he played a lot of what he called bumper music just before or after a commercial break. One he played a lot, and he said he really liked it, was called Boom Boom Ba. The odd thing about this song is, if you check it out, they say that it is the theme music from a TV show called Dead Like Me. They only played the song a couple of times. It didn't show up until the 6th episode. And, like I said, they only played it once or twice during the entire uh, run of the show. Art loved that show. He talked about it a lot. If you've never watched it, you're missing out on one strange show. The main character is dead. So are all of the others. Well, they're actually undead. George Lass is a reaper. She collects souls. The show is not recommended for kids or a lot of adults. Lots of sex and violence, and they swear more than I ever did. I can't believe this show used to be on TV unless it was highly edited. I believe it was 2003 that it was on. That seems like so long ago, while at the same time, just a few years ago. I had a hard time watching it back then because I worked shift work, and we didn't have a VCR that we could record the show with, so I was only able to catch the episodes once in a while. Well, guess what? It's on YouTube. All the episodes. So me and my wife are binging, watching every episode we can, and trying to figure out what's going on in a few of them. Funny thing is, Vic Hermanson, when I mentioned the show to him, said, "Oh yeah, that's that show that Art Bell used to talk about all the time." I did a show about half human and half something else back in July of 2024. I got to looking over some bizarre creatures from the years past, decades past, centuries past. Uh, I thought this would be a good time to bring the subject up again. I know some legends are based on fantasy, but others are from actual encounters. For example, the unicorn was a real live creature. People are, oh, they've never found a unicorn skeleton in the fossil record. Well, actually, they have. I hear some of y'all laughing out there. The ancient Greek writers told of a creature that lived in India. It was described as being as big as a cow, short, stubby legs. Its body was covered in armor plates that were difficult to pierce with an arrow. They had one huge horn that stuck out of their head just above the mouth. The Indian rhinoceros, also known as Rhinoceros unicornus, or the greater one-horned rhinosaur, is a species of rhino found in the Indian subcontinent. It is the second largest living rhinoceros species, with the adult male weighing up to 2 tons. Its thick skin is gray-brown with pinkish skin folds. It has a single horn on its snout that can grow up to 22 inches long. Its legs and shoulders are covered in wart-like bumps, and it is nearly hairless except for its eyelashes, ear fringe, and tail bush. It can flutter its eyelashes. That beautiful horse creature that people think was the unicorn actually came from the Vikings. They hired the Inuits to hunt narwhal and cut the tusk off, which they then sold to Europeans. The Vikings wouldn't hunt the narwhal because they were a little worried it might be a supernatural creature, so they got somebody else to do it for them. Did not look anything like a rhino. As time marched on, legends grow up around some not so fantastic stories. How many are based on actual creatures or simply some weird uncle trying to scare the family? A wild boar is something you don't want to mess with. Boarzilla, the largest wild hog ever caught in Texas, weighed in at 790 pounds. That's close to the size of the average grizzly bear. Wild boar have no fear. They will attack anything, including us puny humans. They eat anything, including us puny humans. You can mortally wound a boar, and instead of fleeing, it will still charge and try to kill you. In ancient Rome, the wild boar was considered a symbol of strength, courage, and ferocity. War pigs, not the song, the creature, was an actual thing. They were used as countermeasures against the war elephants of the Carthaginian general Hannibal at the Battle of Tribia in 218 BC. The 10th Roman legion had a boar as their symbol. People always say that they used pigs against the elephants, but they were actually wild boar. Some folks might think the wild hog problem in parts of the world is kind of a joke. In Anahuac, Texas in 2020, just east of Houston, authorities say a pack of feral hogs attacked and killed a woman outside a home where she worked as a caretaker. Christine Rollins cared for an elderly couple at their home in a small town. Chambers County Sheriff Brian Hawthorne said the 84-year-old woman she cared for was waiting for Rollins, who lived in Liberty, Texas. She was supposed to come by Sunday. The woman went outside and found the 59-year-old Rollins in the front yard between her car and the front door. The sheriff said Rollins had a severe head wound and several other injuries consistent with wild animal bites. The coroner in neighboring Jefferson County ruled Rollins bled to death after an attack by feral hogs. Authorities in Nelson County, North Dakota, are warning people about wild, violent pigs in their region. The sheriff's department says a wild pig tried to attack a farmer several times just north of Tulna. The pig was finally put down, vanquished, unalived, killed, made Karputski. The attack happened Thursday, April 13th, 2003, on rural farmland. Yep, just something to keep in mind next time you're trying to decide if you should carry your sidearm or not. Like Chester Moore says on his podcast, The Dark Outdoors, pray, prepare, and pack heat. Never leave home without it. I can't talk about wild hogs without mentioning Hogzilla, not to be mistaken for Boarzilla. In 2004, Chris Griffin from Alapaha, Georgia, said he shot a 12-foot-long hog that weighed 1,000 pounds. Wild hogs do not make for good eats. You never see Alton Brown cooking a wild hog. Something about their lifestyle makes the meat not so tasty. Most wild hogs are either left for scavengers to eat or they're buried. Hogzilla had his moment of fame photo taken and then into the dirt he went. 2005, forensic scientists filming an episode of Explorer on the National Geographic dug up the remains to have a closer look. What they found was actually closer to 8.5 feet long and weighing about 800 pounds. Still a substantial creature, especially if it's trying to kill you. This thing was a crossbreed between a domesticated pig and a wild boar. Its tusks were 28 inches long. Picture a tooth that is long as your arm. Most what's a fox? Most folks walk around out in the wild with hardly a thought towards what might be lurking in the underbrush. They hear something rustling in the grass, the tall grass, and they think, oh, it's a deer, it's a this, it's a that. They never stop and think, it could be a killer pig. I shot a wounded hog with a 9mm one time. It had been run over by a truck, and everything south of the rib cage was smushy. Uh, Bits and pieces were hanging out where they shouldn't be hanging out. To end its suffering, I took careful aim and I put one round right between its eyes. The pig attacked me. It came charging, pushing itself across the ground using just its front legs. I jumped to the side, and as the hog got close enough, I put a second round right behind the ear. Blood squirted out through the hole between the eyeballs. And I know a 9mm is not a very big round, and it's not adequate for doing such a thing, but at the moment it was the only thing I had. I should have had a 45 or a 10 mil or something. When I hear coyotes at night, I always wonder, what are they laughing about? Have they come across a dead hog somewhere and they're having a picnic? Hogs and boar are not any kind of a cryptid until they get up into the epic size where experts say they can't possibly be that big, and then they find one that is. 800-pound hog, that's a lot of bacon, but they don't make bacon. Way back when things were written in stone, literally, and sometimes on papyrus, there were tales told of the scorpion men. Some of these were found in Akkadian language from ancient Mesopotamia. In the epic Enuma Elish, which was the standard Babylonian version of the Epic of Gilgamesh. In artwork, the form of the scorpion man varies, though they often have the head, torso, and arms of a man, and they have a tail and the body of a scorpion. Scorpion men appeared in the visual arts of the Mesopotamia and ancient Iran. Among the earliest representations of scorpion men are the example from the Giraffe in Iran, as well as a depiction of a bull liar from the early dynastic period city of Ur. That's where they found the Stargate. In the epic poem Enuma Elish, a scorpion man is listed among the monsters created by Tiamat in order to wage war against the gods who had murdered her husband Apsu. In the Babylonian epic of Gilgamesh, they stand guard outside the gates of the sun god Shamash as at the mountains of Mashu. These gates are the entrance to Kernugi, the land of darkness. The scorpion men open the door for Shamash as he travels out each day, and they close the door in the evening after he returns from the night. When Gilgamesh came to Mount Mashu, he encountered scorpion men guarding the gate. Scorpion women also appear in the Gilgamesh story as well. During his travels, he encountered scorpion men. One of the men tells his female, Gilgamesh carries the flesh of the gods in his body. The scorpion woman responds that Gilgamesh is 2/3 god and 1/3 human. I kind of get the impression that Gilgamesh thought a lot of himself. The scorpion man hybrid, also known as Akrabuamule or Gertablu, boy, these words, Gertablilu, is a creature that can be found in the legends of ancient and Near East. The creature had been the subject of many debates and theories, as its origin and symbolism are still unclear. Was it real creature seen by Gilgamesh? Well, historians tend to agree that Gilgamesh was a historical king of the Sumerian city-state of Uruk, and he ruled sometime during the early part of the early dynastic period, around 2900 to 2350 BC. Assyrian stone reliefs from the temple at Nunruta or Kalu or Nunruta at Kalu, shows a god with his thunderbolts pursuing Anzu, who had just stolen the tablet of destinies from the Enlil sanctuary. Boy, some of these names are hard to say. In other stories, Akrabumelu is said to be a creature of the god, a creation of the god Enki, who is the god of wisdom and water. Akrabumelu has the ability to protect the gates of the underworld. In some other tales, they're also said to be guardians of the sun god, Shamash, or a protector for the king. The Babylonian creation epic tells that Tiamat first created Aquabumule to wage war against all of the younger gods. They possessed the ability to see beyond the horizon, and they would warn travelers of impending danger. According to Akkadian writings, the Akrabumelu had heads that reached the sky, and their gaze could cause painful death. Artifacts uncovered in Giraffe and Anuj districts of Kerman Province, Iran, revealed that the scorpion men also played an essential role in the giraffe's mythology. Akrabemilu is often depicted in art as a fierce warrior with the body of a human and the tail of a scorpion. It is often shown holding a weapon, such as a sword or a bow and arrow. The creature is also sometimes shown wearing armor and a helmet. In some depictions, these creatures are shown with wings, which may symbolize their ability to fly. Was there really such a creature? If you follow the teachings of Zachariah Sitchin, you'll know about the Anunnaki. Sitchin was born July 11th, 1920. He studied ancient languages and he translated ancient Sumerian writings about the Anunnaki. Sitchin said Sumerian historians told about a planet called Nibiru with an elongated 3,600-year-long elliptical orbit around the sun. Sitchin's books have been sold millions of copies worldwide and have been translated into more than 25 languages. The Anunnaki were doing all kinds of genetic splicing to see what would work well attached to what. You know, put a bull's head on a chihuahua's body, or put a lion's head on a giraffe. If these stories are true, maybe the idea of a scorpion man isn't so wild. I don't think it would look anything like the Photoshop pictures that you'll see on the internet. It was probably a little more messed up looking, but still, anything that big with a scorpion's tail would be a bit off putting. The boys in the white lab coats, of course, say that Sitchin didn't know what he was talking about, but they waited until after he died to say that. For some odd reason, anytime the experts want to deride anyone who has anything to say that they don't agree with, they almost always wait till they're dead before they start throwing mud at them. The Aztec legends also refer to a similar scorpion men known as Tzitzimime. These beings were believed to be defeated gods who destroyed the sacred grove of fruit trees and were cast out of the sky. The Tzitzimime were associated with stars, particularly those visible during a solar eclipse, and were depicted as skeletal females wearing skirts with skulls and crossbones and having the tail of a scorpion. In the post-conquest era, they were often referred to as demons or devils. The leader of the Tzitzimime was a goddess, Itzpapotl, who was the ruler of Tomanchan, the paradise where the Tzitzimime resided. I can't pronounce that volcano's name either. Depending on who you are, Tzitzimime played a dual role, protecting humans on some occasions and killing them on others. It just depended on who you were and when you ran into them. In the Maya legend of Popol Vuh, a Camazotz is a bat spirit that works in service of the lords of the underworld. Camazotz means death bat. Mesoamerican, generally, the bat is associated with night, death, and sacrifice. In the Popol Vuh, Camazotz are encountered by the Mayan hero twins Hanapu and Zbolinke. Yes, I looked these words up on how to pronounce them several times. Stick a microphone in front of me and I suddenly cannot pronounce a lot of these. During their trials in the underworld of Xibalba, the twins had to spend the night in the House of Bats, where they squeezed themselves into their own blowguns. That's quite a trick. In order to defend themselves from the circling bats upstairs. Hanapu stuck his head out of his blowgun to see if the sun had risen, and Camazotz immediately snatched off his head and carried it to the ball court, where it was going to be used by the gods in their next game. In classic Maya iconography, the leaf-nosed bat exhales unhealthy vapors and is often depicted as a person's nahual or way spirit, bringing disease over an enemy. The classic bat spirit is rarely, if ever, part of the narrative context, nor does it appear to play the role of assigned to it by the Popol Vuh. The ancient Maya had hundreds of deities that they believed watched over humanity, established order, and controlled the realm of the dead. Many of these gods and spirits were somewhat off putting. Portrayed as an anthropomorphic leaf nosed bat, Camazotz was a spirit of death, night, and sacrifice. He fed on blood, and legend says he even played a role in the origin of sacrificial rituals the Mayans were so well known for. Experts believe Camazotz was inspired by a giant vampire bat that used to swarm the skies over Central America. One of these species of bats, Demosodus doraculi, is known to be extinct today, or at least they hope it is. But its nearly 2 foot wingspan, it had a tendency to prey on deer and other larger animals. It had a thing for big creatures with blood in them. Today, vampire bats are tailless and are considerably medium sized with a length of about 2 to 3.5 inches. Their weight is variable owing to the large volume of blood that a bat ingests. A 2 ounce bat can double in its weight during one feeding. Its fur is short, ranging in color from brown to reddish orange. Its wings are long and pointed. The first segment of the thumb is exceptionally long, enabling it to hop and creep in a strangely agile but frog like manner. The common vampire bat is the only bat that is capable of taking off from the ground. It uses its long thumbs to leap about 3 feet into the air before flying off. Any other bat laying on the ground is not able to get airborne. Be careful if you go to pick one up, though. They do tend to carry rabies. Except well, that's one of those things. People tell you, oh, be careful of bats. They do carry rabies on occasion. According to ancient stories handed down over the centuries, Camazotz was said to fly out of caves, grab victims by the neck, and pull their heads off, and then drink their blood. This idea may have come from one of the most well known legends about the death bat. The stories of Camazotz are still around today. In the 1950s, a couple walking in Pelotas, Brazil, late one night reported seeing two large humanoids in a tree. Authorities wrote them off, insisting they'd simply spotted a large bird, but then the sightings continued to come in. 1976, two girls saw a large bird like figure they described as having a gorilla like face. The next day, it was discovered the creature had left behind several three-toed tracks. Sightings of this bird or bat with a gorilla face have occurred as far north as parts of Texas, where several farmers have said that they have encountered these beasts in their fields. With so many sightings on record, it's difficult to write off the existence of some sort of a humanoid bat creature that flies around and likes to feed on people's livestock. The Camazotz sounds a lot like the bat squatch that was seen near Mount St. Helens in the 1980s. It resembles a flying primate similar to an ahul or an orangbati or Southeast Asia. One witness took several pictures of the creature, but these images have yet to be analyzed by experts. If they are ever analyzed by these experts, they're going to say that they're not real, or it's pareidolia, or it's just people are all stupid, or something like that. It's amazing how these experts can look at a photograph of an actual honest to God cryptid and say, that's not what you think you're seeing. You're nuts. Anytime, any show, I don't care what it is, if I'm watching it and they bring in the expert who's going to debunk everything, it's like, it's time to watch something else. Sighting of the bat squatch began in the 1980s, shortly after the eruption of Mount St. Helens. Reports from this period describe it as a monkey like creature with red eyes and wings. Remember the flying monkeys from The Wizard of Oz? April 1994, Brian Canfield was driving in Washington, Pierce County, when his truck suddenly died. Canfield said a large creature landed in front of him. He said it was human looking. It was 9 feet tall, and it had enormous bat like wings. It was covered in bluish fur. As Canfield reports became well known, a series of new reports came in. A person named Butch Whitaker reported that he was in a private plane in the vicinity of Canfield's encounter with the bat squatch when he saw one flying. 1998, a truck driver hauling logs in northern Oregon reported a collision with a bat squatch. This creature was described as being 15 feet tall, with purple eyes, nose, and small wings. 2009, near Mount Shasta in California, several hikers witnessed a huge creature with leathery wings spanning about 50 feet fly out of a crevice in a mountain. At first, an eyewitness described the creature as having a head similar to a pterodactyl. However, upon reconsideration, the witness said that it was more like a flying fox bat. That's the one that you almost always see in a movie that they claim is a vampire bat. Fruit bat or fox bat. They eat rotting fruit. April 14th, 2014, at the Archbishop Hobben High School in Akron, Ohio, a second period Spanish class spotted a giant black mass zip by the window of the classroom at incredible speed. The students all said it looked like a 9-foot tall human with a 20 to 30-foot wingspan. In Greek legends, they have the Hecatoncheirus, or the hundred-handed one, also called the hundred-handed or the Centimanus. I like the Centimanus better, it's easier to pronounce. These were 3 monstrous giants of enormous strength, each with 50 heads and 100 arms. They were individually named Codus the Furious, Boreas the Sea Goat, and Gygus the Long-Limbed. How come the first guy gets the cool name? They were the offspring of Uranus and Gaia. These 3 helped Zeus and the Olympians overthrow the Titans during their epic battle. According to the theogony of Hesiod. They were the last children of Uranus to be born, while according to the mythographer Apollodorus, they were the first children born. In the Hesiodic tradition, they played a key role in the Greek succession stories, which told how the Titan Kronos overthrew his father, Uranus, and how in turn Zeus overthrew Kronos and his fellow Titans, and how Zeus was eventually established as the final and permanent ruler of the cosmos. They had a very violent story back then. The Hundred Handers, along with their brothers, the Cyclops, were imprisoned by their father Uranus. Gaia induced Cronus to castrate Uranus. Good Lord, what a story. And Kronos took over the supremacy of the cosmos. With his sister, the Titaness Rhea, Kronos fathered several offspring, yes, his own sister, but he swallowed each of them at birth because he was afraid that his children were going to do to him what he had done to his old man. Well, Zeus was spared by this by Rhea because she actually gave Kronos a rock to swallow and then hid Zeus away in a cave. Eventually, when Zeus was old enough, he freed his brothers and sisters by cutting Kronos open, and then they went to battle with him and his minions. Very interesting stories back then. Gaia had foretold that with the help of the Hundred Handers, the Olympians would be victorious. So Zeus released them from their captivity, and the Hundred Handers fought alongside the Olympians against the Titans and were instrumental in their defeat. The Titans were then imprisoned in Tartarus with the Hundred Handers as their prison guards. 100 hands, that's just way too many. How would you manage so many digits? 100 hands, that's 500 fingers. 50 heads, who is going to be in charge? I have enough trouble just trying to manage one. But that was the Greek mythology, or was it based on something real, and just the guy telling the story got a little carried away with his numbers? In East Flanders, in Belgium, people fear the nocturnal Kludde, or shouting monster. People know him as a horrifying tormentor. Some people have described the Kludde as a furry about as big as a large dog that walks on its hind legs, with heavy beaded bracelets on each arm and ankle. It has claws like a bear, a black maw, bat wings with green glistening scales on its back, and crimson glowing eyes. The creature is always depicted as being male. One of his claims to fame is he drags children into the river. The origin story of the Kludde is found in the mid-18th century, just outside a forest near a small town of village called Ternat in Belgium. There was an old broken down cottage, and nobody knew where it had come from or how long it had been there. An old woman, who was said to have been a hideous, evil woman like the devil, she was also said to be in league with Old Scratch, lived in this cottage. The villagers believed that they had to do something to drive her away, as it was only a matter of time before the evil that she was working with would infect their town. The men of Ternat wished to burn the witch, like that scene in the Holy Grail. Burn the witch! She turned me into a newt. I got better. The villagers wanted to get rid of her, but none would dare do so. she might kill them back instead. One night during a thunderstorm, the town. Okay, try that again. One night during a thunderstorm, lightning struck the old cottage. The witch inside was burned to death. 3 days later, a group from the village went to inspect the charred rubble, and they found her blackened corpse. Even being dead, the villagers were still afraid of her. She might still kill them back. A wealthy landowner who wished to purchase the property so he could have more land sent his servants over to do something about that dead witch. They took shovels and pitchforks and they went to the corpse to bury it. You can't have a dead witch laying around your property. The moment one of the servants touched the corpse, the ground shook, the sky resounded with a thunderclap. The burnt corpse split open and a small ash-covered man clomb out. Within moments he grew to an astonishing height. His body contorted, he screamed and then growled. His face extended into a wolf-like snout, his legs curved and bent into those of a dog, claws grew on his feet and his hands, and he became the Kludde. With the beast now fully formed, the Kludde ran off in search of clothing. You have a monster that is embarrassed about being naked, a modest monster. I can't have a naked monster running around the place. As the monster ran away, it was heard yelling Kludden, which translates to clothing. Other times the name has morphed. Over time, the name has morphed into Kludde. We can call this thing the clothes monster. I have never in my life heard of a monster that was embarrassed about being naked until now. As for the witch, her corpse had become a pool of black sludge. Folks began to say that the witch had given birth to a monster that was there to spoil the land. Returning back to the village, the men told others that the town was now cursed because the witch had given birth to a Kludde in order to rain havoc across the land. I still can't get over the idea of a, a squeamish monster. A group of villagers was rounded up to hunt the Kludde, but this turned out to be more of a challenge than they thought. The Kludde was a shapeshifter and could take on many different forms. Several hunters witnessed it shapeshifting into a large bird that was on fire. It dragged a long chain behind it. Others saw it turn into a large white and red-haired dog, a small white rabbit, a starving horse, a stallion, a pig, and even a woman. The hunters continued chasing the Kludde through the forest over the course of several weeks. The Kludde was reportedly making butter and milk turn rancid and rendering cows and horses infertile simply by being near them. There were claims the Kludde wasn't as dangerous as it appeared. It simply wandered around scaring drunkards and laughing at their screams. Others told of more malevolent acts, such as killing a stable full of horses, kidnapping and defiling young women who were walking through the forest at night. The hunters eventually caught up to the Kludde, but found all their weapons were ineffective. Arrows and pitchforks simply passed right through it. And then it would laugh at them as it just stood there unharmed. One man tried to grab the Kludde with his bare hands, and he said it was like trying to grasp smoke. Another man was somehow able to pin the Kludde to a wall, but the beast simply shot fire into his eyes and killed him. The Kludde escaped, and to this day, many have claimed to see it in one of its many disguises. It's said to haunt the lonely roads looking for those traveling alone. If you're lucky, it might just play a prank on you, while others have disappeared and have never been seen again. As time moved on, the Kludde began as time moved on, the Kludde was being created from any cremated bodies of witches or wizards. So now you had more than one running around. It can move at immeasurable speed. Some say if you're able to kill a Kludde, 7 more creatures would crawl from its corpse. He likes to play dangerous games such as glomping. He glomps unsuspecting passers-by and becomes increasingly heavy while sitting on them. I'd never heard of glomping before, so I had to look it up. To glomp is to lunge enthusiastically over the top and potentially dangerously hug so that others begin to have a difficulty breathing. You run at somebody, kind of tackle them, and then squeeze them in your arms. Yeah, I'm seeing glomping suddenly becoming popular out there. The monster can sometimes be found in the reeds, under bridges, and inside hollow trees. If you're out for a stroll in Flanders and you run into a Kludde, you had best run as fast as you can. If the creature's gaining on you, throw your handkerchief on the ground. That is, if you still carry a handkerchief, which most folks don't today. The booger vault is fallen out of fashion. I never thought a handkerchief would save my life. The Kludde, seeing a handkerchief on the ground, will be overpowered into stopping and tearing the thing into tiny pieces while you continue to run away. The Kludde has an ability to change into a wide assortment of animals, such as ravens, snakes, cats, frogs, bats. It can also turn into a tree that grows to enormous height. Other times he will show up looking like a human being, just anything. In other words, don't trust anyone. They might be a Kludde. Sometimes he appears as a horse, and he will offer to give people a ride. I don't know how a horse offers to give you a ride, but it offers you a ride. If you climb onto the horse's back, he will immediately run to the nearest river or stream, dash out into the water, and then shake you off, making you fall into the water. Then he gets up on the bank of the river and laughs at you. Other times, people believe that the Kludde is a werewolf or a demon. Just depends on who you talk to. The first written record of the Kludde's appearance was penned in 1840 in Ternate by the Baron of St. Genoese. This back-riding shapeshifter appeared in Brabant and Flanders, where he lived in the Dendre, which is a 40-mile-long river. In Ostend, he is considered a necker or a nix, and the flat country knows him as a werewolf. A necker or a nix is a spirit who dwells in quiet rivers and lakes in England, Germany, and Scandinavia. Their love of water is equal only by their love of music, and their beautiful songs often draw listeners to the banks of their watery homes. In human form, they usually have an elegant appearance, although their features may be just a bit sharp looking. Their ears and their eyes are sharper than usual, and their hair and their skin might be tinted green or blue. In more extreme cases, they may have gills, bulbous eyes, and webbed hands and feet. Their garments, though stylish, are chronically wet around the edges. Sounds like somebody I worked with. Kludde cause fear and confusion, and they drink green pond water. but they avoid crosses and consecrated areas. In other words, they won't go into churchyards or churches. Kludde do all kinds of weird things, but a lot of it is just pranks. Kludde come out at night in the Flemish mists. He has earned his name from the call that he cries while fleeing. Kludde, Kludde. As a shapeshifter, he has no fixed appearance, and Kludde has been encountered in the forms of great black dogs with a rattling chain that it drags behind them, a half-starved horse, a sheep, a cat, a bat, a frog, or a tree. The only constant in Kludde transformation is the presence of two blue flames that are flighting around where its eyes should be. Now, these are all Kludde, but from different parts of different regions of the area. Some say that the pranks that the Kludde play are mischievous but not deadly. In the guise of a black dog or a werewolf, he'll jump on a person's neck and vanish after wrestling the victim to the ground. As a horse, he tricks people into riding, and then he gallops and knocks them off into a river or a stream. As a tree, the Kludde will start out as a small sapling, growing either in the middle of the road or right close to the edge, and then suddenly it'll sprout forth and shoot up into the sky, becoming as tall as the clouds. Suddenly. Ode Rode Ogun, or the Old Red Eyes, which is also called the Beast of Flanders, was a spirit reported in Belgium in the 18th century who would take the form of a large black dog with fiery red eyes. In Wallonia, the southern region of Belgium, folktales mention the chained hound, a hellish dog that is once again dragging a long chain. It was thought to roam the fields at night. In Germany and the Czech Republic, it was said that the devil would appear in the form of a large black dog. In East Groningen, in the northern parts of Holland, there was the Boris, a ghostly black dog with huge glowing eyes. Now, could this all be the same creature, just different parts of the world, or are we dealing with more than one creature here? Why do so many cultures have similar creatures in them? The Gabriel hounds are said to be related to the black dog, also related to hellhounds and yethhounds, stories in English folklore. They possess the heads of human infants with glowing white eyes and dog-like bodies. These hounds are heard more often than seen. Their presence is made known by eerie wailing cries. They've been known to travel in pairs or packs. If a Gabriel hound is witnessed flying over a house, legend says that doom will fall upon that household. If a person is on their deathbed, the hound's cries are said to indicate it is time for that person to go. Once the person is dead, the hounds are rumored to capture the soul of the person who has died. Gabriel hounds are also called Gabriel Ratchet and Sky Yelpers. Once a Gabriel hound appears in an area, it may remain for weeks or months, is seeking out victims and terrorizing the locals with its horrific cries, or their horrific cries. It is rumored that black magicians summoned these hounds in order to perform evil deeds and to reveal hidden treasure. It is also said that a Gabriel hound's origins may be utilized by powerful magicians. Organs, not origins, organs. How in the heck would you use somebody's origins for magic? Yeah, the Gabriel hound's organs can be used for powerful magic. A Gabriel hound may disappear and then rematerialize anywhere within 50 yards of its original location. The hound's disappearance is preceded by a shimmering, uh, like darn, what's that thing they're always talking about on expanded perspectives? The glimmer man. It starts to shimmer and then it disappears. If you happen to be touching the hound as it begins to shimmer, you will vanish along with the hound. Then you will reappear wherever the hound reappears. If it should decide to reappear high up off the ground, you're going to fall down and hurt something. Sometimes a Gabriel hound will attach itself to a person. The creature will slowly drain away all of the victim's energy to the point of death. The only way to end the curse is by destroying the hound. However, nobody seems to know how to destroy a Gabriel hound. It just says you have to do it. This may have been used to explain away consumption, which is today known as tuberculosis. Somebody has incorporated the Gabriel hounds into a game. I got all kinds of information on these creatures only to find it's all game rules. Legend meets modern technology. Just because somebody gives a creature a name, or they use a creature from ancient times, doesn't mean they invented that creature. It just means they put it in a game or gave it a name, like the pale crawler. The dip is a Catalina legendary being. It's an evil, hairy dog who is an emissary of the devil and is seen to be lame in one leg. It feeds by sucking on people's blood. According to legend, the dip sucked the blood out of cattle. They only moved about at night. Among their other victims were folks who frequented bars, drinking establishments, and found themselves staggering around in the dark. You'd think drinking the blood from somebody who was toasted, the dogs would become quite drunk as well. At the entrance to Prat Dip, Spain, is a monument devoted to this being. Because of his thirst for blood, the dip served to inspire Joan Perucho in his novel Les Historias Naturales, or Natural Stories of the 60s. He tells the story of Onofre de Dip, a vampire with the ability to transform into animals. This story takes place in Prat Dip at the beginning of the 19th century, in the midst of the First Carlist War. And the Dip is actually an ambassador of James the First, the Conqueror, who 700 years earlier had gone to the Carpathians on a diplomatic mission where he had been attacked by a vampire. The Carpathian Mountains are in Romania. You know, that part they call Transylvania. In other parts of Spain, such as the Canary Islands, there's a belief in a being or an evil spirit in the form of a woolly dog known as a Goyota, the demon. 1914. German troops had occupied Mons, Belgium. The British, in their first foray into the battle during World War I, marched in to try to liberate the area, despite being heavily outnumbered. The German army not only dug trenches, they made them livable. The sides were reinforced. The floors were sloped so that water would drain. There were bridges so that troops could move over the trenches without having to climb down and then back up. The British High Command, the folks in the rear with the gear, decided that trenches should not be improved because the idea was the soldiers wouldn't feel motivated to climb out and charge the enemy. Most British trenches were just a hole in the ground. Trying to oust the Germans, the British soon discovered they're not going to succeed in just a few days, not even a few years. The area between the German and the British lines became known as No Man's Land. It was where most of the dying took place. One side or the other would jump up and run across this open area, while the other side shot at them. The ability to kill had far outpaced the idea of tactics. During the first few months of the war, at sunup and sundown, both sides would stand to, which meant they were either ready to attack or to repel an attack. Once the stand to was over, troops would try to relax and find things to do that did not involve killing or dying. If an attack was launched and hundreds of men were shot out in no man's land, after the shooting had stopped, both sides would walk out into the battlefield to recover the dead and wounded. After several months of this, somebody got the idea that anyone out in no man's land was a target. So suddenly you were not able to recover the dead or the wounded, and they simply laid where they fell. The wounded had one of two choices. They could crawl back to their own lines, or they could lay there and wait for death. Shells rained down from above, landing in between the two sides, causing the land to take on more of a moonscape. Bomb craters were everywhere. In some places, the two sides were only a few hundred yards apart. Barbed wire was strung back and forth, making a charge less manageable. Tripwires with cans filled with stones were used to alert the sentries at night. As one side would succeed in an attack, the other would withdraw. The lines began to wander about. Soon the battlefield was a mass of trenches that might be on either side depending on the time of the day. You might find yourself fighting from a German trench or shooting into a formerly British trench. Snipers became quite popular. They would sit in a spot waiting and watching for movement. Any part of a soldier that appeared above the top of the trench was a target. As their abilities improved, snipers began using shields to protect themselves. These could be just a steel plate to hide behind, or a metal housing that gave cover from the front, the sides, and the top. At night, the barbed wire fencing needed to be repaired. Intel needed to be gathered. Soldiers from either side would be voluntold they were going to go out on a night patrol. Each man had to be sure that there was nothing that might make a sound, giving the snipers a heads up to their movements. All their gear was tied down or left behind. Rifles were exchanged for bayonets or trench knives. In total darkness, the squad would sneak out to fulfill their mission. Squads of soldiers would venture out, moving in the darkness. Time would tick by. The sentry would watch for their return. If by sunup the squad had not come back, it was assumed they'd been captured by the enemy. On occasion, the men on duty through the night would hear blood-curdling screams coming from the middle. Stories began to be told of some crazed killer lurking out there in the mud, waiting for a patrol to come by. Some said this was some lunatic that had been released from the Germans and set out there to kill anyone that it encountered. After too many missing soldiers, centuries began seeing or hearing a huge black hound moving around out in no man's land. A few lucky soldiers actually managed to get back after their night patrol, telling stories of something that had followed them all night long. This thing had been picking them off one by one. It was a huge dog, as big as a horse, with glowing red eyes. What neither side knew was this was happening to both sides. This creature became known as the Hound of Mons. The stories of a different kind of monster emerged. Soldiers would find themselves trapped between the two sides. As thirst and hunger took over, they might decide that that dead guy was looking mighty tasty. Having both sides a shooting at you, these lost men began to band together. It didn't matter which side of the war you started out fighting for. Once you began living in the middle, you were no longer really a soldier. These men were called wild deserters. They might be British, French, Belgian, Austrian, or German. There were so many abandoned trenches and underground tunnels that these no longer men could slip back and forth as they wished, looking for food in any form it was to be had. A dead body might be dinner, or somebody from the night patrol who just happened to wander by in the dark. As time went on, these deserters grew in numbers and diminished in humanity. They became more like zombies or ghouls. The story goes that as the trenches moved back and forth, if either side found any of these no longer men, they were immediately executed. From November 11th at 11 o'clock onwards, any wild deserters found were simply shot and buried where they were found. Hope you enjoyed tonight's show. If you did, tell your neighbors, tell your friends, tell people you work with, tell people you don't even like. They should be listening to Strange Things with Chris James. Until next Saturday, this is me.
Are you coming to the tree where there's strung up a man who they say he murdered 3? Strange things have happened there. No stranger would it be if we met at midnight in the hanging tree.